The novel Don Quixote was written by Miguel de Cervantes, a Spanish writer who lived in the late 16th and early 17th centuries. Considered one of the most famous and influential novels in world literature, the story is set in Spain and follows the adventures of a man who becomes obsessed with tales of knights and chivalry. He sets out on a journey to become a knight himself, believing he can bring justice and honor to the world. The story begins with a man named Alonso Quijano, who lives in La Mancha, a region in Spain. He is a middle-aged man who spends all his time reading books about knights and their heroic deeds. Over time, he becomes so absorbed in these stories that he starts to believe they are real. He decides to become a knight-errant, a wandering knight who fights for justice. He renames himself Don Quixote and dresses in old armor. He also renames his old and weak horse, calling it Rocinante, and sets off on his first adventure. Before leaving, Don Quixote feels that he needs a lady to dedicate his noble deeds to, believing that true knights should serve and honor a lady as a source of inspiration and devotion, just like the knights in his books. He chooses a local farm girl named Aldonza Lorenzo, whom he has never really spoken to, and gives her the name Dulcinea del Toboso. In his mind, she is a noble lady of great beauty and grace, though in reality, she is just an ordinary woman who does not even know of Don Quixote's admiration. His first adventure does not go well. He arrives at an inn, which he imagines to be a grand castle, and asks the innkeeper to knight him. The innkeeper, amused by Don Quixote's strange behavior, plays along and performs a mock knighting ceremony. Soon after, Don Quixote gets into trouble with some local men, who beat him badly. He returns home, injured but still determined to continue his quest. Don Quixote realizes that a knight needs a squire, so he convinces a poor farmer named Sancho Panza to join him. Sancho is simple and practical, unlike Don Quixote, but he agrees to follow him in hopes of gaining wealth and power. Together, they set off on more adventures, filled with strange encounters and amusing misunderstandings. Don Quixote often misinterprets the situations he finds himself in, leading to comical and sometimes dangerous consequences. One of the most famous episodes in the book happens when Don Quixote sees a group of windmills and believes they are giant monsters. He charges at them with his lance, expecting to defeat them, but he is quickly thrown to the ground when his lance gets caught in a windmill's blade. Sancho tries to explain that they are only windmills, but Don Quixote insists that an evil magician must have turned the giants into windmills to trick him. Don Quixote and Sancho continue their journey and encounter many people along the way. In one adventure, Don Quixote attacks a group of travelers, thinking they are villains, but they beat him instead. In another, he tries to free a group of prisoners who are being taken to serve as slaves on ships. He believes they are innocent victims, but after he sets them free, they turn on him and steal from him and Sancho. Despite these failures, Don Quixote's belief in his mission never wavers. During their travels, Don Quixote and Sancho also meet a group of actors who are performing a play. Don Quixote, confused by the costumes and props, believes they are real knights and monsters, and he disrupts their performance, creating chaos. In another misadventure, he encounters a group of shepherds and believes their goats are an army preparing for battle. His wild imagination leads to more unintended trouble and laughter. Despite these setbacks, Don Quixote remains convinced that he is a true knight. He imagines that the world is full of magic and hidden enemies trying to stop him. Sancho, on the other hand, is more realistic, but continues to follow Don Quixote out of loyalty and the hope of receiving a reward. Don Quixote's sense of reality becomes more distorted as he continues his adventures. He mistakes inns for castles, peasants for nobles, and criminals for innocent victims. At times, people take advantage of his false beliefs, tricking him into believing false stories and making him the subject of their amusement. At one point, Don Quixote meets a wealthy man named Don Diego de Miranda, who is fascinated by his strange behavior. Don Diego invites Don Quixote to his house, where he meets Don Diego's son, a poet and student. Don Quixote talks about his beliefs in chivalry, and though Don Diego and his family find him amusing, they also admire his deep commitment to his ideals. Later, Don Quixote and Sancho arrive in the city of Barcelona, where they meet a nobleman who plays a trick on Don Quixote. The nobleman challenges him to a fight, disguising himself as a knight. They fight, and Don Quixote is defeated. As part of the agreement, Don Quixote is forced to return home and give up his adventures for a year. This defeat deeply affects Don Quixote, and his spirit begins to weaken. After returning home, Don Quixote becomes sick. He eventually realizes that his ideas about knights and chivalry were just fantasies. He gives up his past beliefs and accepts reality. Shortly after this realization, he dies peacefully, surrounded by his friends and family. Sancho Panza mourns the loss of his friend, for even though Don Quixote was confused, he was also kind, brave, and full of dreams. In addition to these main adventures, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza have numerous encounters with different people across Spain. They meet priests, nobles, farmers, and thieves. Each interaction reveals more about Don Quixote's strange mindset. Some people pity him, while others laugh at him or try to take advantage of him. Through all of this, Sancho matures throughout the journey, slowly becoming wiser as he follows his master's unpredictable path. One of the more humorous parts of the story happens when Don Quixote is tricked into believing he has arrived at a great kingdom. A rich, noble couple plays along with his fantasies, treating him like an honored guest. They set up elaborate tricks to entertain themselves, such as convincing Don Quixote that Dulcinea is under a magic spell and can only be freed through absurd tasks. Despite being humiliated, Don Quixote remains firm in his beliefs. The novel Don Quixote explores the contrast between fantasy and reality, showing how the power of imagination can be both inspiring and dangerous. Don Quixote's journey teaches readers about the importance of hope, the risks of ignoring reality, and the deep value of friendship. Through humor and tragedy, Cervantes explores how people interpret the world differently and how society reacts to those who challenge conventional thinking. This timeless story continues to inspire and entertain, reminding us of the delicate balance between ambition and illusion, while celebrating the courage it takes to follow one's dreams, even in the face of ridicule and failure.